of speakers who will be talking about case studies. But before I hand it off to Tim Streitz, I'd like to let you know that the agenda and the speaker bios are on the link provided you. And if that, please let us know if you're not able to access it, and we will resend those links to you. But so now I will hand off to Tim Streitz, who is with the City of Honolulu. Tim, and actually the CClear worked with the City of Honolulu to get their first Brownfields grant. And after Tim received his grant, they subsequently worked with Hart, who also got their own grants. And after that, Marian Gushiken with EAH Housing obtained one of the technical assistance services from the EPA, and Marian is with EAH Housing, and actually Marian and I went to school together. So I'm glad that my Brownfields experience has been able to help Marian and housing in Honolulu. And our last case study speaker is John Wallenstrom with Alakai, who's going to provide information on renewable energy and housing projects. So Tim, I'm going to hand it off to you now.
Thank you, Ignacio. Again, my name is Tim Streitz, and I'm within the TOD division. We're housed under the City and County of Honolulu's Department of Planning and Permitting, and we manage the city's community-wide assessment grant. You can go to the next slide. To get started, I just wanted to quick give a background of TOD for those who are unfamiliar with it. It's transit-oriented development. We're looking at compact mixed-use development within easy walking distance of a transit station. And in this case, we've been focusing our efforts on where the future rail stations are on Oahu. Next. So as part of the TOD program, we have multiple objectives. One of those I just wanted to highlight at the bottom of the list there is revitalizing older communities. So thinking about like our legacy communities, this is where I think the Brownfields funding really comes into play, making sure that those lands that have been used industrially or perhaps other types of uses that could lead towards contamination are reviewed. Next. Okay, so this is just showing an overview of the rail corridor, the 20-mile, 21-station corridor. The city has jurisdiction for 19 of the 21 stations, and typically we look at about a half-mile radius from where the stations are. Rail has been the driver for creating these TOD plans, and as you can see by the color coding, we're in various stages of having those approved by our city council. The few that are remaining in white are in draft form, so if they're not adopted, we've at least put something onto paper and have that available on our website. Next. This is just to give you a kind of a overview of the TOD program. Starting on the left of the chart, we've been doing working with the communities, doing planning for the past 10 to 15 years. And now we're moving into the implementation of those plans, which includes zoning, infrastructure capacity review and installation, and then kind of between that and getting to our final vision of how the neighborhoods will look, per the plan. We have these catalytic projects, and that can include both public and private investments. And then eventually, we hope those will spur additional development as well as the other tools I'll be talking about, and get us towards more of a full TOD build out. Next. So one of the tools that we have is, of course, the zoning. It's really beneficial because the city is doing it in this case, instead of having a developer come in and have to petition for that. So the entitlements will be there. One of our biggest incentives, I feel. Before the zoning is actually in place, we have this interim plan development transit permit for bigger sites, so at least 20,000 square feet. And that allows for projects to come in before the new TOD zoning and special district is there. And that is kind of our most flexible type of permit. It allows for development standard relaxation, as well as looking at different types of use. And after that, we have our TOD Special District, which is currently in place in 2 station areas in Waipahu. And then we anticipate expanding the boundaries of that to the other stations as those TOD zone changes come online. And then basically what we're doing with the TOD zoning is allowing for greater flexibility, density, and heights through mixed-use zoning and changes to the zoning land use ordinance and zoning maps. Next. This is just an example of what it looks like. This is a draft of the Pearl Ridge Station area next to Pearl Ridge Shopping Mall, Pearl Ridge Station, and you can kind of just see, perhaps maybe it's a little bit too small, but the new concepts that are introduced, the mixed-use zoning, the heights, and now the new concept with TOD zoning is the new height in parentheses, which is the bonus height. And these bonus heights and densities can be achieved by providing community benefits in return for those. Next. Another part of the process of helping implement the TOD plans, as I mentioned, was the infrastructure investments. So we've identified over $1.5 billion of infrastructure investments needed in the next 2 to 3 decades. Most of this is already planned for, but we will need some additional funding to realize the full capacity in many of these neighborhoods. Next. Another tool we have, we worked with the state closely and the governor to designate the federal opportunity zones to closely align with the TOD areas. So as you can see on this map here of Oahu, almost all of our island opportunity zones align with the TOD corridor. And just zooming in on the West Lock area, that's where we do have the TOD zoning. You can see kind of how all these tools are overlaying to really help property owners and developers, investors capitalize on the TOD potential. Next. This corridor market study is a follow-up to our individual TOD plan market studies that were conducted during the course of each plan's development. This is kind of a refresh, but also taking a look at the corridor-wide perspective, accounting for the give and take, that might occur between the different TOD neighborhoods. This projects out to 2040 and looks at a high-low scenario. That's the ranges you see there. It's pretty significant, office, residential, retail, those are over half of the island-wide demand is anticipated to be captured within the TOD corridor. Hotel as well is pretty significant, 35%, and then a little bit of industrial, which is not typically a TOD type of use. We look at more transit rider type of developments and uses that can take advantage of the rail. Next. I just wanted to point out too, the state is a major stakeholder in this. They have close to 2,000 acres of land within half mile of the rail stations, and they have their own TOD planning efforts going on as well. But just wanted to point that out. It might be a development partner if you're looking. Next. So specifically for Honolulu's Brownfields Assistance Program, we've had $700,000 that we've received, thankfully, from the US EPA. And we can use this funding for environmental assessments and cleanup planning. We've decided to target this funding towards smaller landowners and businesses in the TOD areas, in particular around those legacy communities that might be more susceptible to contamination, but we are open to any of the TOD areas if you're interested in utilizing this. And then this could help with, obtaining additional cleanup funding afterwards, and we can help assist with that. So of course, the benefits, just kind of reiterate what was said earlier, but more from a perspective of the property owner's viewpoint. There's no charge to participants, it's voluntary. We are only focusing on or asking that the projects that do get selected have kind of a similar vision as the TOD plan in that area. These remove uncertainty. And then, of course, they're a redevelopment tool for providing the highest and best use of your land. And then, obviously, creating a safer environment. Next. Now, I want to jump into a specific case. This is a case for a shoreline park over in Pearl Ridge area. And that's right off of Pearl Harbor. You can kind of see it circled there near the Pearl Ridge rail station. Next. The idea is to create a half-acre park at the convergence of 3 important amenities. So it's sandwiched in between the Pearl Harbor Historic Trail and Pearl Harbor Shoreline. It's also right next to the Pearl Ridge Rail Station and Transit Center that will be built shortly after. The idea is to acquire and preserve shoreline access, create and preserve a view corridor of the water, and then clean up land from past industrial uses, and then create a recreational amenity for the community, both for existing and anticipated residents in the area. Next. The couple viewpoints looking from the west side of the site give you a better idea of what it looks like on the west. On the right, looking west, that's from the Pearl Harbor Historic Trail. And then looking south on the left there is looking into the site. Next. Another view looking into the site on the left there, you can see kind of this kind of junk piling up and industrial uses occurring in there, similar to the one on the right. Next. So in this case, we've conducted a phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessment. We identified soil and groundwater contamination and exceeding the DOH's levels. And we also followed that up with a cleanup plan. We evaluated 6 alternatives and settled on a preferred alternative, site capping with land use controls, because this was also closely aligned with the Honolulu Mayor's directive on climate change, which looks at sea level rise as part of that. And this site has the potential to be impacted by 1 to 2 feet of sea level rise. So we thought, it can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone with this planning remediation work. So looking at the implementation, we're in the process of site acquisition right now, utilizing the Honolulu's Clean Water Natural Lands Fund. If you're not familiar, that's a dedicated portion of the annual property tax that goes into the fund for land conservation efforts. We're working with the state Office of Planning to obtain potentially some funding from the revolving loan fund. And then in the long-term maintenance structure, we're looking at public-private partnership. So that could be in connection with the adjacent city project for a mixed-use transit center with residential on it, or as I mentioned, with those community benefits that developers can get in return for the additional height and density, that could be also considered a benefit. Next. Just really briefly, as part of this, I think which made it really successful, and another benefit to using this program in the TOD areas is that these have all gone through extensive community vetting and have gained the support that way. So it makes these projects really easy to do once you have the cleanup accomplished. This complies with multiple community plans. Pearl Harbor Historic Trail Master Plan looks at the roughly 8.5-mile corridor of the historic trail there to make it a recreational trail. It connects many of our TOD neighborhoods. So it just seemed like a great opportunity to build off of that as well. Next. Of course, the Aya Pearl City TOD plan is also envisioned as a parkland in that area and ties in a little more in detail to the surrounding community. Next. And then we have some other plans, a primary urban center development plan, Aya Pearl City Livable Communities plan, also showed and envisioned parkland in this shoreline. And so, of course, Aya Neighborhood Board, we weren't surprised that they unanimously supported it because of the community's participation over the years in these plans. So this is one way to help implement those. Next. As I mentioned, this is where we anticipate the public TOD Catalytic project, where after the staging work is done, we'll be working on a transit center and then phasing in a mixed use component with residential. And this is adjacent to that green area there where the site is that I've been talking about, and has the potential to work in the maintenance through a RFP or the long-term agreement with the developer and maintainer of that catalytic site. Next. Just wanted to leave on a note for those who have been over in Kauai, around Kauai, along that coastline there, this kind of similar vision that we have for the Pearl Harbor Historic Trail, really taking advantage of that resource and orienting our communities around that. Next. With that, I'm putting up my contact information here. If you would like to get in contact for any more information, I'm available. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim.